What is the most disturbing fact you know about the human body? Actually has an innate plan for what needs to happen if you end up 20 plus feet underwater. This was commonly called the drowning response, but many have argued that this is a misnomer, as a drowning response should be activated at or near the surface. But there are some portions that don't happen there, for instance, the blood shift. When you are deep underwater, your body constricts the blood vessels in your extremities and non-immediately essential organs. Your heart slows. This allows you to not only survive, but to stay conscious, sharp and alert at some pretty ridiculous steps. While you're down that deep, there's also an incredible coming sensation that keeps you from getting super worked up and using all your oxygen too fast. Additionally, many, perhaps not most, people have the ability to run virtually entirely and aerobically for rather long periods of time. This is how people hold their breath for 10 plus minutes without going brain dead. Their body simply trips to run the anaerobic cycle and produce lactic acid, conserving their oxygen reserves to be used to keep their brain conscious. For these reasons, many have argued that this is far more likely a dive response, meaning that we're all a bit better prepared to be in the water than we've been led to believe. You are genetically engineered to be submersible. That's both a little weird and very cool. Everyone has cancer, everyone. In fact, most people develop cancer multiple times a day. Luckily, our immune systems are advanced enough to kill these cancerous cells early. Only the unlucky end up with clinical cancer. Also, if people could not die of old age and ailments like heart disease were eradicated, everyone's eventual cause of death would be cancer due to the limited lifespan of the immune system. Funny how things stick in your head. 20 years ago, I heard a cancer researcher on the radio say that the mystery of cancer isn't why some people die from it, it's why some people don't. I was pretty awestruck by the fact that there are more microbes, bacteria mostly, that call your body home than there are cells in your body. Also, when looking at another human, most of what you are seeing is dead. Your outermost layer of skin and your hair are made of old cells that are completely keratinized and therefore functionally dead. You start out as a little ball of cells. Then you start caving and imagine pushing your finger into a ball of Play-Doh. This is your ends, and the hollow cavity will continue forming until it reaches your mouth. You now have a GI tract. If an ingrown hair breaches the hypodermis, the innermost of 3 layers of skin, then it is likely to cause blood poisoning. Such cases often go undetected and can lead to gangrene and limb amputation. The most dangerous in growth is under the chin at the junction with the neck, that Redditors call the neck beard. This problem is more common than you think, so it is always advisable to shave along the grain with a single blade. Factoid: the roots of subcutaneous breaching were unknown until a factory in East Germany gifted or dumped an entire lot of low-quality twin blade razors into the polished district of Lubisky. The polishmen had little experience with shaving till then, as beards had been normal, until the communist regime conflated it with social misfits. This led to an epidemic of ingrown hair and several amputations due to subcutaneous of breaching. After painstaking medical detective work, the roots of the problem were finally identified. If our brain gives restrictions, we would destroy ourselves. We are strong enough that we can tear our own skin off just by gripping things tightly. We are strong enough to lift lorries and tear through concrete. But our brain stops us. We would bite off our own tongues or break our own teeth. Drugs like PCP can stop the brain from controlling you properly. This can allow people to do terrifying things using human strength. It also makes us do psychotic things. The combination is pretty close to the idea of infected. There are multiple stories of people eating each other while on PCP, as well as people tearing their muscles to shreds by overexerting themselves or destroying the skin on their hands whilst clenching into weapons and such. Now that is disturbing. I wonder if there's a way to train yourself not to be restricted by the brain as much, though, to get extra strength. It takes only 5 pounds of force to pop and permanently destroy a testicle. 2.5 pounds applied to the sternoclavicular node can crush the trachea and cause asphyxiation. If someone stabs you, 2 inches to either side of your third lumbar vertebrae. You will bleed out and die in 30 seconds. And no one on earth could save you, because the renal artery is just that vulnerable. Every time your cells divide, your DNA gets a little bit shorter. There is a limit on how much your cells can divide. Eventually, you wear away enough of your DNA that the cells can't go on. Your body eats away a bit of the blueprints for it. Every second, luckily, tell them a raise exists. What's cool, though, is that telomeres run out and kill us on purpose in order to protect us from cancer. That will kill us picking your nose. And eating whatever comes out is healthier than not eating it. The mucus will break down and add to your stomach lining, making it stronger. Any dust, pollen, etc. will help train your small intestine to filter that stuff out. And any potentially harmful bacteria or viruses will help train your immune system to retain a memory. To remember something, protein synthesis must occur, and the connections between neurons must strengthen or weaken through the expression of these proteins. This means to remember something. A physical change happens within your body, so when someone does you wrong and you remember it, he changes you physically, akin to a kind of brain scarring, albeit microscopic. He literally makes a mark on you. Whether you like it or not, the increase in allergies in first world countries are evolutionarily due to parasites. A body is pretty ineffective against parasites, and much of the non-first world countries have a large populace infected with parasites. First world countries don't have parasites, the immune system. Mechanisms that are normally used to fight parasites are hypersensitive, without parasites, and cause allergies. So you pick allergies or parasites. A single well-timed strike to the chest, directly over the heart, can cause instant. It's a phenomenon known as commotio cordis. The force of the blow is enough to mechanically trigger ion channels in the cells of your heart, resulting in abnormal triggering a heartbeat, RF phenomenon. This turns the heart into a quivering mass of muscle, with no coherent heartbeat, resulting in death. It happens to young baseball players. There is a triangle-shaped area around your nose known as the triangle of death. Basically, it is an extensive collection of veins that flow to the cavernous sinus in your brain. If you get a really deep and infected zit on your nose, that infection can easily spread through your blood-brain barrier to your brain and kill you very quickly. That your body's immune system isn't aware of some parts of the eye. When someone gets stabbed in the eye and exposes their immune system to the eye, their other not injured eye can sometimes be attacked by the immune system, which sees it as a foreign body. Your brain will make shit up to cover for what it doesn't know, to the degree that you won't even know that you are lying to yourself. It may sound like your brain is hardwired to get you to lie in defense of what you believe, but it's not that simple. Instead, it seems like the brain is hardwired to lie to you in defense of what you believe. It's not that you're lying, because you sincerely and completely believe the defense you are creating. Those defenses are not only not true, however, but they have been constructed by your brain solely for the sake of defending what you believe, and regardless of whether or not they are true. And you aren't even conscious of it. Syphilis comes in stages. People in the age of Puritans and Pilgrims thought that they could pray away the disease, and lo and behold, it went away. As it is transitioning to a more severe stage, symptoms will cease. They would soon notice their skin would be full of sores, so they would wear super white makeup to cover it up, along with long sleeves and high-collared shirts or dresses. Their hair would also fall out, so they would have to wear those crazy white wigs, the ones that old-time judges wear. They would find out in the tertiary stage that the disease cannot be stopped, and they are slowly going mad and dying the effects of terminal burrowing hide and die syndrome, where in the last stages of hypothermia, people will crawl into small and confined spaces to die. I had to research this for a class I took a year ago, and it still haunts me. I'm not entirely sure this is 100% relevant to the body, so much as the brain shutting down. But it's disturbing nonetheless. You can live with half a brain. There is a condition called Rasmussen's encephalitis, which is basically inflammation of one half hemisphere of your brain. There is no known cure for it, and the condition is progressively leading to worsening seizures and other things. However, you can remove half of the brain that is inflamed, and the other half should compensate for it. But only if you are very young, usually less than 3 years old. If I'm remembering correctly, you will live to have perfect intelligence and cognitive abilities, but will suffer from some vision and movement problems. Most people think that obese people have bad arteries, and their bodies are full of fat, and it's very much the opposite. I have seen 600-pound people with a orders equivalent to children's, and no fat on their organs, just right under the skin. And to counter that, very healthy active people with terrible vessels and very fatty organs. The two that get me and give me chills on almost daily basis are the ideas that one just underneath the skin of every person is a walking skeleton covered in pulsating, wriggling, oozing, fleshy nightmare. Every time you go to sleep and your consciousness stops. This is almost exactly the same thing as what you will experience when you die, at least so far as the cessation of consciousness can be called an experience, that not all of our tissue, organs, or systems die at the same rate. So long after our brain stops registering consciousness, some tissues will still be happily chugging away until they run out of sugar, water, or oxygen. Some tissue, like skin, could arguably live for days before it finally croaks. It's weird to me to think about what existence will be like when some tissue is still alive. But our brain has stopped responding to sensory input. You will get Alzheimer's. It's not a question of if, just when. If you live long enough, develop Alzheimer's or a similar disease, because this family of diseases is caused by misfolded proteins that aggregate and can't be broken down like usual, so they just keep accumulating in people with the genetic predisposition. The misfolding happens more often, so the aggregates grow quicker, but even in a perfectly healthy organism. This happens from time to time, so everyone would get the disease eventually. We have a nerve in common with fish. It connects our brain to our neck and helps us speak, and in other animals as well. Make noises. The disturbing part is that every animal on Earth have the nerve the same way. It goes behind our heart and then up to the neck, just like in fish. But it makes sense on fish, because they actually have no neck. So we inherited that characteristic from fish. You know when you have a cold, and all this snot appears, and you can't figure out why your body is suddenly producing all this snot. The amount of snot being produced is exactly the same. But when you have a runny nose, the mechanism that lets you swallow snot automatically, without your knowledge, isn't working. You are eating buggers right now. The liver metabolizes alcohol first into the toxic chemical, acetaldehyde, an animal carcinogen that causes DNA damage and other cancer-promoting effects, before converting it into the harmless substance acetate. Unfortunately, because I'm Asian, I lack the genetic deficiency in the alcohol metabolizing enzyme, ALV2, that helps with this breakdown process. Therefore, this leads to the accumulation of the toxic substance, acetaldehyde, in my system, which means I may eventually die from esophageal cancer. Well, fuck that. In the billions of cells that constitute you, every second, there are trillions of vital operations like DNA repair and protein synthesis going on that you have not the slightest conscious idea about. You can't even control. Your heartbeat could stop for the same reason it's working, and you couldn't even complain about it. The piezoelectric effect in bones. Basically, in crystallized structures like bones, when a mechanical force is applied, it creates an electric field. We have cells called osteoclasts which eat bones, and osteoblasts which make bones. The osteoclasts are constantly eating away our bones everywhere. The cool thing is that the osteoblasts are only reputing bone according to the electric field. So we get bumps where muscle and tendon attachments are, and get rid of bone when it's doing nothing important. This means in athletes who, for instance, play tennis right-handed, will have thicker right arm bones than left, from more frequent mechanical forces applied to it. Also, the fact that our bones are constantly being eaten and reformed.